Have you ever been in an argument where it feels like you and the other person are on completely different planets? Where the facts seem so obvious to you, but they just don't see them? It's happening all the time, right? With family, friends, strangers online. So today, we're going to dig into why it feels like we're all living in separate realities. And look, this isn't just a hypothetical. This is a real comment from someone watching the source material, and wow, it just hits you, right? It perfectly captures that frustration, that feeling of seeing something so clearly with your own two eyes, but being totally unable to get someone else to see it too. This isn't just about a generation gap. It's something much, much deeper. So that leads us to the big question for this whole explainer. Why? If the evidence is right there in front of us, why do facts so often fail? Why do we just double down on what we already believe? Well, the answer, and you might find this surprising, it isn't in some new study. It's actually way, way older than that. Now, you're probably thinking this is a modern problem, right? Something caused by the internet or social media. But what if I told you that the key to understanding all this madness was written down about 2,400 years ago? No, really. The answer comes from the ancient Greek philosopher Plato in his legendary book, The Republic. It was written around 400 BC, and inside it he tells this story, this allegory, that feels like it could have been written about our world today. All right, so to really get this, you have to use your imagination with me. We're going to paint a picture, piece by piece, so we can really see the world the way Plato laid it out. So picture a cave. It's deep, it's dark, and inside, there's a group of people who have been prisoners their entire lives. I mean, since birth. They're chained up so they can only face forward, staring at a blank stone wall. They can't look left, they can't look right, they can't look behind them. This wall is their whole world. Okay, so here's the setup. Behind the prisoners, there's a fire, and it's the only source of light. And between the fire and the prisoners, puppeteers are walking back and forth holding up different objects. A cutout of a horse, a tree, whatever. The prisoners can't see the fire, they can't see the puppeteers. All they can see are the shadows these objects cast on the wall in front of them. For them, these flickering shadows, that is reality. And this is where things get really twisted. The puppeteers might hold up the shadow of a horse, but make the sound of a rooster. So for the prisoners, who've never known anything else, what's their truth? What's their fact? Horses crow. And they would bet their life on it. But then, something happens. Imagine the chains on one of the prisoners just break. And for the first time in his life, he can turn around. He can start this journey out of the only reality he has ever known. Now, this journey is not a walk in the park. It is brutal. First, he turns and sees the fire, and it's disorienting, it hurts his eyes. Then, as he stumbles his way out of the cave and into the world, the sunlight is blinding. It's actual pain. But bit by bit, his eyes start to adjust, and he sees color. For the very first time, he sees real grass, real flowers, a real sky. And then comes this earth-shattering realization. His entire life, everything he thought was true, was a complete and total lie. And this is such a key point. That psychological shock is huge. When one of your core beliefs gets shattered, your mind puts up a fight. Your ego goes to war with the logic your eyes are seeing. And if someone has a really big ego, they might just reject the truth right in front of them, because admitting you were wrong for so long is just too painful. So what does this guy do now that he's seen the real world? He could just hang out, enjoy the sunshine, and forget about everyone else. But he doesn't. He feels this sense of compassion, of duty to his fellow prisoners. And he makes a decision. He's going back in to tell them the truth and set them free. But think about what happens when he goes back into the cave. After being out in the bright sun, his eyes aren't used to the dark anymore. He can barely see. He's tripping over things, stumbling around. He's clumsy. Maybe he even hurts himself on the way back to his old spot. And here is the absolute tragedy of the story. The other prisoners, still chained to the wall, see him come back. But what do they see? They see a guy who's stumbling, confused, seemingly blind in the dark they're all used to. For them, this is all the proof they need. They think, see, the outside world is dangerous. It hurt him. It made him crazy. So he tries to tell them. He says, no, you don't understand. There's a sun and colors and real horses that don't crow. But to them, he just sounds insane. His truth completely contradicts their entire lived reality. They see his knowledge as a sickness, and so they don't just disagree. They mock him, they attack him,
and they fight with everything they have to not be freed. Okay, so that's a cool story from 2,400 years ago, but what in the world does it have to do with us today arguing online? Well, as it turns out, it has everything to do with it.
Let's just map it out. Plato's cave. That's our social media echo chamber. The shadows on the wall? That's the curated, cherry-picked content we see in our feeds every single day. The puppeteers making the shadows? Well, that's the algorithm. And the prisoners, chained to the wall, staring at the shadows, absolutely convinced that what they're seeing is real? Well, that's us.
Think about it. The algorithm's main job is to keep you watching, to keep you in the cave. It learns what you like, what you agree with, and it just feeds you more and more of it. This endless scrolling, this passive consumption, actually weakens our ability to think critically. Our brains have these things called mirror neurons, which basically means we start to subconsciously adopt the ideas and emotions we see over and over again. It's repetition theory 101. A lie, or a shadow, if you repeat it enough times, starts to feel like the truth.
Okay, so if we're all living in our own personal caves, shaped by algorithms, how do we spot someone who's really, truly trapped? Someone whose chains are so tight that facts and logic just bounce right off?
Well, the source material gives us 4 big red flags. First, their identity is more important than logic. They'll say, as a doctor or as an engineer, to shut down an argument instead of using reason. Second, their ego is bigger than the truth. They get genuinely angry or defensive when corrected, even if you're right. Third, their personal opinion is the final word, no logic required. And fourth, they're hostile. Anyone with a different point of view isn't just someone they disagree with, they're an enemy to be defeated.
If you recognize these signs in someone you're talking to, you have to remember the story of the cave. Trying to argue with them directly, trying to drag them out into the sunlight with facts and figures is just like trying to break the prisoner's chains by force. It's almost always going to be met with fear and anger. So, what's the move? Plato's conclusion is a little tough to swallow, but it's wise. Don't get into a head-on battle. If you feel you must, share little bits of information gently over a long period of time. But honestly, the most important thing is to protect your own sanity. You can't force someone to see the truth. You just can't.
So we've spent all this time learning how to recognize a prisoner of the cave. But here's the thing. Plato's story wasn't just about pointing fingers at other people. It was a warning for everyone. So the real question, the one I want to leave you with, is this. What if we're the ones in chains? What shadows are we staring at every single day, completely convinced that they're real?